Okay, hello everybody. Welcome back. Happy afternoon. It's the end of Unit 9, so we got about 3 weeks to go, and then we're going to call it a quarter. So today we're going to discuss your final project, your last project for the quarter, and set up some expectations and take questions and hopefully clarify. I will be doing a demonstration on Tuesday. Today, I just want to talk about the project. You guys have another project you're wrapping up for this weekend. And I have a couple of student examples to share with you, talk about them. And, this time it's going to be a little bit different, as I mentioned before. So with that being said, let's get started. So hopefully you're seeing my desktop. Is that correct? You guys see my desktop? Yes, no?
Yeah,
Okay.
in the Canvas.
Yeah, thank you. So you'll notice that I created a module that says presentation quiz, and it's locked until tomorrow, I guess tonight at 12 a.m. At that point, you should be able to access it and start looking at the videos, your peers' presentations, and then take the quiz when you're ready. Let me get out of student view for a second. Let me show you some things. So the access code is written there. So if somebody says, Marco, what's the access code? It either tells me you weren't paying attention during our conversation today, or didn't watch the video if you're not here, or you're not looking in the module. There it is, right there. So, and this is basically what I've been doing with my quizzes. I always put the access code in the module. You'll notice that it's worth 45 points. Okay, let's go to the quiz itself. It is 180 minutes long. Now, if my math is correct, that means it's 3 hours. You have 3 hours to complete it. And it is 3 sets of matching. Okay, so that means that there's a list of names, or there's a list of topics, and you're going to match the name to it. There are no repeats. You only use the name once. However, there's another batch of the same names, and there's a third batch with partial names. So there's a total of 45 matching opportunities within 3 sets. Somebody is at my door. Hang on, guys. Let me pause my. So somebody knocked on my door. I have no idea what that was about. All right. Sorry about that, everyone. Okay, so as I was mentioning, it's 180 minutes. You'll notice, let me show this. You'll notice that there is a table with the designer's name and a link to the YouTube video. Most of the videos are about 9 minutes long, and I think that there are 17 of them. So that's a lot of content, right? So watch them first. What I started doing is I started playing them back at like 1 1/4, 1 1/2 speed to kind of get through it a little bit quicker. Some people talk fast, so maybe you go a little bit slower. Some people talk a little slow, you go a little bit faster, and it kind of find your pace with a lot of these presentations. But they're all pretty well done. I was very happy with the overall outcome, and yeah, just check them out. Okay, so watch them first, then take the quiz. If you launch the quiz, remember you only have 3 hours. There's no way you're going to watch all this stuff and take the quiz within a 3-hour window. So watch them first. And if you need to go back to the videos to find the answers, I understand that. I get it. But you want to prepare yourself a little bit in regards to what some of these topics and subjects are. Okay. So I don't know if there's anything else.
So you said that each video is about 17 minutes long?
7 minutes. 7 to 8 minutes.
Okay,
there's a couple, I think, that hit about 10 or 11. On average, I think they're about 8 minutes long. So just as an FYI.
All right, sounds good.
Okay. So yeah, all good stuff. And any other questions or concerns? No, so you can start watching this stuff tomorrow, okay? So let's get out of this window and then let's get into student view.
Sorry, the quiz is due for the end of the quarter.
March 25th. I'm
Okay,
giving you the
perfect.
full quarter to do this.
Awesome. Thank you.
So, you know, if you want to watch a few videos every day, that's fine too. You're just going to have to pace yourself. But I'm going to tell you, you don't want to wait till the 25th to start this. You know, you'd rather don't do that to yourself. Give your, you know, pace yourself if you don't want to like kind of bog yourself down with all the content. All right, so here's unit 9, and I'm going to jump to lesson 18. All right, and I'm going to.
You know, I always like this quarter because March 26th is my birthday. So I usually finish all my assignments by March 23rd, 4th. So my birthday feels so good that I'm done with everything.
Well, happy birthday.
Thank you. It's
Did you say it was? Did you say it was the 4th?
26th of
Oh,
March.
the 26th.
Yeah. So class is done on the 25th. So
Right as spring begins, huh?
yeah.
That's great. That's awesome.
Spring chic.
Okay, so here's a couple of more examples of student projects that were turned in the last time I taught this class, which was a couple of years ago. I tried finding the ones that were a little bit more lighthearted. Obviously, the topics are pretty self-explanatory, right? And you'll notice that once again, they are 2-color illustrations. In your particular assignment, I'm letting you pick whatever Pantone color you want. If you don't know how to pick Pantone colors, that's fine. You will learn or know about Pantone colors on Tuesday when I go over sort of brief demonstration of how to set up your file and some strategies that you might want to consider. What do you guys think of the illustrations? Any comments, any thoughts?
It looks nice. Pink.
I like the start button on the Healthcare for All. I thought that was a nice little touch. The other thing that I want to mention is you'll notice the first one is working in a singular value. In other words, it's full saturation. The one color, which is black, is in full saturation. The other color, which is the pink, is in full saturation. You'll notice that the second one is using tints. So tint is the act of adding white within the color. So you can see that there are different values or different saturations of the pink and the black. And that's how you get this illusion of gray and these lighter pinks. So remember, the illusion of a lighter color is a smaller dot and a greater separation between them. So if we were to print these out, you would actually eventually, if you looked at it with a magnifying glass, you would actually see the little dots separated from one another. The one on the right, this also has tints in it. However, this one's using a gradient. So one of the things that you should be aware of, now this isn't something that's going to occur in this class, but it's something that I think I should share with you, that anytime you work with a gradient, depending on how abrupt, fast the gradient is, like how fast it transitions, especially within a smaller area. In printing, there can be a side effect or an artifact from that, and that's called banding. So banding is the illusion that the gradient is not a beautiful, clean transition. You actually see these bars of different values that don't blend beautifully as it does in the screen. So it'll look one way in the screen, but then when you print it, it has a different characteristic or a different quality to it. So banding is a concern whenever you use gradients within an illustration. So just throwing that out there, if you ever see it, that's what's going on. And why is it happening? The reason it's happening is that the printer that you're using is either not calibrated for that level of accuracy for a gradation, or it can't handle it at all. So what I mean by calibration, sometimes you have to put in the right setting for it to print properly. And in some cases, there's nothing you can do. The printer just can't handle it. So there's a difference between printers. Some are referred to as photo quality or archival printers, art printers. Those are the type of printers that primarily we have in the lab in the ATC and where I teach. And then there's also color, like a standard desktop color printer, or what's referred to as a color laser jet. And those are the printers that you might see some banding, depending, once again, on how it's set up or the quality of the printer. Usually the higher end the printer, the better it can handle a gradation within its output. Okay, so there's the link to the quiz. Once it's published, you can access it through here. These are the same examples that we saw last time, and we might refer to these again once we're done looking at the handout. Any questions that you might have about what I just said regarding these three illustrations? Yes, very distinct styles between the first two. Yes, this is very minimalist, right? This has a Bauhaus-like quality. If you're familiar with modernism and early design language, early 20th century design language, the Bauhaus, which was one of the first formal design schools, this kind of has an aesthetic that leans in that direction. Whereas this one is far more representational. In other words, it looks more realistic. So we have something that's abstracted, modified, simplified, streamlined, and then we have something that looks more like a photograph, right? So yeah, very stylistically different. Great observation, Eliana. Thank you for pointing that out. Anything else? No? So don't be afraid to rely on iconography and symbolism or portraiture. This is really up to you how you're going to pursue it. I'm not trying to dictate the, whoops, did I not publish that either? The aesthetic direction. I don't want the immersive reader. Publish. Sorry, guys, I thought I published that. All right, so here we go. All right, so it's 100 points. 100 points possible. Did I set up the rubric? Yep. Oh, I got to fix the rubric, guys. I'll clean that up. I like to have 5 categories now, not 10. So I am going to switch the rubric where I'm just going to combine like deliverable and presentation together. They're kind of the same thing. It just makes it faster for me to grade. So just note the rubric will be compressed into 5 categories of 20 rather than 10 of 10. Here's the image that we saw last time. And obviously this is a 4th style, very distinct than the others. Frankly, this is probably my favorite one of the class. And as I mentioned last time, I just feel like it captures the spirit of what I was hoping would be visually communicated. I like the sort of element of joy and happiness. I think that it really sort of hits the mark. And as I think it was Joel who said, it's really on the nose. It's almost like perfect for the project outline that I'm sharing with you. Okay, so the goal here is to illustrate a two-color illustration based on the topic above. So the topic is, it's pretty open, except it must have a spirit of joy, solution, and design for good. So I'm calling it open. I'm giving you some possibilities, but I'm hoping that it sort of strives for happiness, basically, something joyful, something positive. I know that some of the things that we discussed or saw last time regarding this project went in a different direction, but I'm really hoping that we sort of try to embrace something joyful in this particular experience. These are the expectations. So I'm asking you to make a mind map. If you deviate or you move away from the topics that were sort of described initially and you made a mind map of first, you might want to make another one. That's what I'm trying to say here. If you throw away your research and you decide, I'm going to do this instead, I'm going to ask you to do a mind map again. And I just think that it will really help serve gathering some sort of visual direction and an understanding of the type of iconography and symbolism that you can use in your illustration. So illustrate a narrative through symbolism, text, and iconography that communicates and connects with a concern tied to your concept. It may be easier to keep your message simple. And what I mean by that is instead of dealing with, like I said, broad topics, you might want to sort of focus and narrow in on something very specific. I think the example that I'm showing you, it's dealing with the idea of hope. So it's more narrow than, well, I don't know. Is it narrow? I don't know. What do you guys think? It's kind of broad, actually. Well, keep that in mind. Try to keep it focused if you can. It must have a typographical element. This can be a hand-drawn or digital text. So I don't care, but it needs to have some sort of typography on it. And it doesn't have to serve as a title. It could be a decorative element. It could be something that sort of presents a twist within the concept. It doesn't have to be, like I said, this sort of obvious title-like graphic. It could be a texture. It could be a pattern. It could be, multiple type-based elements. So it's totally up to you how you'd like to use that. You may want to consider using negative space illustration techniques. And so we saw some of those negative space illustration techniques when we looked at those samples that I found off of Pinterest. When we revisit that document, I'll point out some of the negative space components within the illustration. And that'll give you another level of complexity. And it almost gives you a third color. So let's say you use a Pantone orange and a Pantone blue. Well, white is the absence of those. And you could create negative space textures or cut into the illustration to weave some sort of visually interesting or narrative-like graphic within the larger graphic that you're presenting. This sort of reminds me of Favre's, I forgot her first name, Favre's illustration techniques. She uses a lot of opt art and a lot of negative space illusions within her style. You might want to reference her work for some inspiration in regards to how to possibly incorporate that within your project. You may illustrate using any technique that you prefer. However, this must be illustrated in Illustrator. So we're going to use the correct application, the correct software. I do not want something that's pixel-based or from Photoshop. It needs to be vector-based. Okay. You can illustrate in any style. If using Live Paint, Image Trace, or effects, you must expand before submitting your file. So I only want expanded content. If using text, you must outline or expand the font for submission. So expand your Live Paint stuff, expand any trace stuff, and expand any fonts that you might be incorporating within the file. I basically want everything to be a vector when you turn it in. The illustration must be illustrated in 2 colors. These must be Pantone colors. Each color must be in its own layer. So that's one of the caveats in terms of constructing the file. And once again, I'll show you some examples of how to set it up on Tuesday. You will be sharing your project in a discussion group, which will be posted later. So that'll be one of the last things that we submit at the end of the quarter. Deliverable and considerations. Obviously, you need to complete the due date and upload the file by the due date and upload the file to Canvas. What is the due date? The 25th. And the reason for that is that is the last day of instruction. So I cannot accept the file after the 25th. So that's a Friday. So that's why I'm making a big deal about that and setting it as a bullet point. We will have an online group critique. Once again, I will provide the link at a later time. What size would I like this to be? I really just want a vertical format. If you want to do some sort of unique looking composition, just run it by me, but 8.5 by 11 would be perfectly fine. I think that aspect ratio would be fine. But if you want to do something else, something that's really elongated, I'm open. Just let me know what you want to do and why. How is it going to help or serve your illustration? The file type, I want a PDF and a JPEG. I want both file types submitted. And I think that I set that up correctly this time. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Any comments, concerns, questions?
I have a question.
Yes, Jennifer.
So just to understand correctly, when we are doing the research with the 3 people, they're gonna tell us some ideas, and then we will make a roadmap about their ideas.
Mhm.
And if we want to do a different project, like a totally different topic, then we have to do another roadmap, or
That is correct. That is correct.
okay, all right, that was my question. Thank you.
Mhm. And you will be sharing the roadmap in your final presentation of this assignment.
Okay, and then
For the
when
final-
we are questioning the people, like, do they have to tell us like a topic and then just words what are associated with that topic,
That's
or
basically it. Yeah.
okay,
Mhm.
all right,
They
thank
don't
you.
have, look, you said have to. I'm not a black and white. I don't see the world in black and white. You know, I'm always open to possibilities. So maybe they don't have a phrase for it, but in the conversation, you find a way to describe it later. That's totally okay. But I do want them to try to have this conversation about what would be a good thing to achieve. You know what I mean? And descriptors. The descriptors are important. Because it'll give you ideas or clues of things that you can leverage visually. So it's not that I'm just asking you to have this conversation for the sake of research. That conversation, there might be buzzwords that can be used or transformed into archetypal or iconographical symbols or elements within your illustration.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Anybody else? No, straightforward. All right. All right. So I'm going to get out of this for a second. All right, and looking at the text, so this one treated it like a title. You can see that this is very poster-esque, right? So it looks like a poster, like an ad or something like that, a service announcement. This one also has a title. It's funny, both of these deal with equality. Interesting that I didn't even notice that until right now. Just shows you how slow I am. But both of them deal with equality. You'll notice that this one tried to be a little sort of subtle about it, or tried to make it a little bit mysterious, whereas this one is very overt. It's like, you know, hitting you in the head with the topic right away. This one's playing with metaphor, right? And sort of weaving the people together. And you'll notice that the colors are also woven within each figure. So that sort of presents this idea of equality. And in this one, obviously it presents it in a different strategy. It's a different sort of way of trying to tell the same story. I think it's really interesting that this happened. I didn't plan for this, but it's kind of fun to see the same topic juxtaposed next to one another. And this is something that was actually part of this assignment. This assignment was intended to be a collaborative project. We were going to print these and then present them collectively in one of the walls within the ATC for everyone to see. It was supposed to be a montage project, but we went into shutdown and that never happened. So this aspect ratio is also a little bit different. These are 5 by 8.5, I believe. So they're smaller than 8.5 by 11, and they're a little bit longer. They're not as wide. So they do appear a little bit different than what an 8.5 by 11 would look like. So I'm going to launch the 2-color example file again. And now that you know the prompt, we can sort of look at some of the expectations that I've built into the project. So you'll notice that it is 2-color. Now the negative space illusion, where is it in this particular illustration? You'll notice that I've pointed this out before. There's this kind of leaf or organic sort of shape that's emerging in her hoodie. So you can see that negative space, the absence of color there, creates this additional level of complexity within the illustration. Where else is it? You'll notice that it's used as decorative or detail elements within the hoodie as well. It's also the text within the hoodie. You'll also notice that the negative space is also used in the texture of the hair. So it's used in numerous areas within this particular illustration. Now, this has an additional component that I didn't say in the handout, but you can overlap the colors, and I will show you how to do that. You'll notice that it creates, actually in this case, a fourth color by overlapping the red and the blue. So this becomes almost a purple-like color. So in fact, we have blue, we have red, we have white, and we have purple. So there's actually a possibility of developing something more visually complex depending on the strategy, the overlapping, and the negative space that you weave into your illustration. All right, so let's look at this one. So this doesn't have a whole lot of overlap, and the colors just basically don't lend themselves to that. We said this already. There is some negative space, right? So the text is in white. So that's being revealed out of this little sort of bubble that's emerging from the person singing. And you'll notice that there's also a textural component in some of the areas throughout the illustration. You'll also notice that there's texture in the white space, right? And so that's to create a distressed illusion, to make it look vintage, or to make it look like it's a lino cut print. If you know what that is, that's where you take a piece of vinyl and use special knives and tools to work away the vinyl to reveal an image, or it could look like a woodcut. Right? It's the same idea, just a different material, but it has that sort of distress in it that a more vintage looking illustration may have. And that might be something that you want. Maybe a textural element in the background might be something worth leveraging. In this particular case, and I think we talked about this in the last class, the topic came up, what if it isn't white? What happens to the color? Well, you'll notice that this is not in a white background. This is a tan background. So imagine you were printing on tan paper. The colors would become darker and more saturated just because it's sitting on something darker. So if this was on white, the colors would probably be a lot more vibrant than what we're seeing here. Let me zoom out a little bit. Okay, negative space components, the texture on the beak of the bird, the texture on the feathers of the bird. There's a lot of textural elements throughout the characters. You'll notice that there's negative space in this branch right here. So you'll notice that in this particular instance, the negative space is really being used to apply more tactile or textured-like surfaces within the illustration. Let's look at the overlap. So you'll notice that this object right here that looks like maybe a rock or a plant where something's growing off of it, the blue has red stacked on top of it, and it creates that purple-like illusion. Check out the zebra, the arms on the zebra. Does it have a trap or an edge on the arms? You'll notice it doesn't. Merely the texture is allowing the illusion. It's called emergence. It's allowing the arms to emerge from the background. So it's using this psychological cue, our understanding of what an arm looks like. And it's not revealing the whole thing. It's only showing a portion of it, enough for us to make sense out of it. So it has a lot of negative space, and it's kind of a clever device to allow the shape to emerge from it. So you can see that this is using a lot of the same methods that the other illustration used, just in a different way. Here's the negative space in the tree. Negative space, illusions within the characters. This does not have any overlap illusions. So it appears that there isn't sort of a crossover here or a crossover there. They look separated. So it's a little bit different. This one has some overlap, right? Where the hands of one of the figures overlaps the face. You can see that there's a different value there. It has a different illusion, kind of purpley right there. Check out the negative space illusion. It's that pattern. It's really beautiful, right? Almost hypnotic. It's kind of a trippy illustration, isn't it? All right, let's check this one out. We talked about this one at great length last time. This one has different values. We also talked about tinting. I'll show that, how to set that up on Tuesday as well. But there's a tint component and on the red, so it ends up appearing as a pink. And then check out the overlap. The blue and the red creates this purple-like illusion. Negative space, the text, and all of this texture within the heart. I should remove this one. I kind of don't like it. What do you guys think? It's too kind of Disney for me.
I like it.
Who said that? Aliana?
April.
Oh, April? Why do you like it, April?
The red and blue one, right?
This one right here?
Oh, never mind. I was talking about the red and blue flower one.
The red and blue flower one? This one? Oh, I think this one's lovely. I think this is gorgeous. And I think this one's gorgeous too in a different way. This is the one that I'm having a hard time with.
It reminds me of Africans, those masks that they.
Yeah, it kind of has like a tiki-like motif to it, or African motif to it. There's fairies and butterflies. It's just it's called Fairyland. It's just a little too, I don't like, kind of, for lack of better words, sappy content. I like things with a little bit of an edge to them. This is too kind of sappy for me. But it does have that stacking of color illusion here. You see that? And if we were to print it in the risograph, if this was something we actually produced at school, even though you might intend for the colors to line up, when they strike, they might actually be a little bit off from one another. So you'll get these little artifacts where the color will peak out a little bit. So that's a lack of registration. It just means that the colors are not registered perfectly. The printer that we have is a high volume printer. It prints really beautiful colors, but it's not accurate in terms of stacking the colors on top of one another. So it kind of has that distortion built into the experience of it. And that's actually something you can leverage, something that you can sort of take advantage of if you want that sort of quality in it. But this sort of describes that lack of registration in the two colors. It's just slightly off, and it's, you know, peeking off to the side. You get these little like highlights of different colors juxtaposed next to one another. So, you know, I guess it's good that I have it. That it gave me an opportunity to talk about that. All right, so let's look at this
I have
one.
a quick question, Professor.
Yes, Andrea.
That transparency is opacity, or basically the tint that plays the game of the
So-
colors?
So what happens? So the color. So in the printer. So let's talk about it that way. And I know we're not looking at the printer, but the way that this happens in a tangible object that you hold with your hands is it combines the colors in one of two ways. In one possibility is that the pigment has a semi-transparent quality. It's not fully opaque. So in other words, it doesn't cover, it won't cover another color as a solid. So because the ink is semi-transparent, it allows another color to bleed through it. So in a sense, it's almost like stacking layers in Photoshop and setting one of the colors to semi-transparent, something like that. So the ink in the printer literally does that. Another reason it happens is the idea of tinting, as I mentioned earlier. When you make the color lighter, remember, it makes the dots that make up the illusion of the shape. So when we look at this illusion of what looks like a mushroom with a happy face on it, what makes up the illusion of that shape are a series of dots that are really close to one another. If we made that color less saturated, if we made it whiter, it would look like a lighter pink. It would start to go pastel. The dots would get smaller and they would start to separate, allowing anything below it to bleed through. So in a sense, it's also another form of transparency. So that's why it happens.
I see.
But
Good explanation.
But to create the illusion digitally, like let's say you wanted that illusion, you never intended to print it. You don't intend to print it, but you want that style, like in a design that you're making, let's say in Photoshop for a website. You're never going to print it, but you want that style, that overlap effect. Then you'd have to use a blending mode. And so that's what we're going to look at on Tuesday. Which blending modes will support this illusion in our digital file? Okay. But if we were going to print these out at school, we wouldn't rely on an overlay. We would just print the pink one first. We'd take the sheet of paper, put in a blue drum, run the paper through it again, and then strike it with the blue on top of it, and the illusion would happen just through the inks.
Interesting.
Okay. So, but digitally, we have to kind of fake it through blending modes. So hopefully that made sense, guys. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. Sorry, you guys are asking me questions, and you're going to make me geek out. So that's what happens when you start asking me design stuff. All right, so this one, I really like this one in particular. This is a stock photograph, so you can see that there's a watermark on it. So try to ignore the watermark and focus on the illustration. What I really like about this one are sort of the textural components that have a narrative quality. And what I mean by that is that it's not just like a crosshatch effect. It's a texture over the submarine, but it tells part of the story. It looks like the seaweed that would be in the ocean or other objects that would be in the ocean. So I think of all of the illustrations, I like this one the best because of that clever like device where they're adding little decorative elements that sort of support the story. The other thing that I want to mention is that this is using a strategy where there are multiple icons or symbols put together collectively. Almost, this is a montage also. This is a montage that one person put together that collectively tells the story. So it doesn't have to be one sort of composed narrative illustration like this one, right? Where this kind of has like a painting-like format. It can be set up more like a collection of icons if you wanted to. Now you'll notice that the icons are arranged in a particular way, right? The icons also create another symbol. And this is a dumb question, guys. What symbol does it make? I read Stefano's note. She said a heart. Yeah, it makes a heart. So this illusion where other objects put together trick your mind into seeing something else. It's not a literal heart. It's the collection of these shapes and how it's drawn that reveals the illusion of a heart. This is a Gestalt technique. This is a Gestalt, there's a Gestalt principle in play. So if you've taken other design courses with me, I talk about Gestalt on a regular basis. The Gestalt principle that's here, that's in play, is referred to as emergence. So you might want to check out the Gestalt principle emergence, and you're going to see other examples that are relatively similar to this. You'll also see similar techniques with typography, where people create like a cluster of text, and depending on how the text is arranged, it looks like something else, right? So it's the same sort of strategy, and it's the same psychological principle that's in play. Once again, it's referred to as emergence. So that's something that you might want to leverage in your illustration. You know, you have this kind of profile that you want your collective icons or symbols or little illustrations, when they're put together, to reveal that greater symbol or that greater object. So I really like this one. I think it's a really cool project. All right, and then last but not least, this is really painterly. And I'm not opposed to something like this happening, but my demonstration is not really, I don't think it's really going to lend itself well to this, but we'll see in the demo. If somebody is interested in looking at brushes, maybe I'll take a brush or create a brush, and we'll make some brush strokes that look somewhat painterly like this and see how they look. Okay, so but I sort of expect the illustrations to look more like everything else that we've seen up to that point. All right, so any concerns or questions? Anything that maybe you've thought of since we started looking at these examples?
So you're going to tell us how to format everything on Tuesday, right?
I'm going to show you how to set up your file and,
Okay.
and format certain things, but I'm not going to show you how to illustrate anything specifically because
What Pantone folder or
You can use any Pantone combination
Any
you want.
Pantone? But it has to
So-
be Pantone?
It has to be Pantone. And that might, okay, so I'm gonna get on my soapbox again for a second, okay? So this is an advanced illustration class, and we're at the end of the session. Some of you have taken numerous classes with me, and you guys probably have a sense of how I teach, what's important to me. Sometimes I like to build little lessons in things, little experiences in things intentionally. And one of those is go find your own Pantone combination. So why would I want to do that? Why do I want you to find your own Pantone combinations?
Because you want us to be free to use our creativity independent of your
Absolutely.
opinion, right?
I want you to pursue your own artistic direction. But why else? Why else do I want you to pick your own Pantone colors?
Isn't it using Pantone colors is just like a best business practice? And by allowing us to choose our own, that just allows us a bit more freedom as designers to dictate its look.
Yep, that's exactly it. So
Oops, that
it's
was
a
a punch to my stomach. So much more.
It's best practice, and it's something that you need to learn to do. You need to sort of become familiar with that space. I'll show you where the Pantone swatches are. I'll show you how to look at them in different ways. And I'll also show you how to convert maybe a color that you sample into a Pantone. But it's really up to you at some point to start researching Pantone colors and finding combinations that work well together. Another silly question. What's a great way to find out Pantone pairings? What's a great way to find out Pantone pairings?
Maybe
On the
color wheel?
website, no?
I heard two different answers. I'm sorry, couldn't get it.
Mine was the color wheel.
Okay, that's perfect. I love that answer. That's great. Yes, we can definitely use the color wheel. Somebody else said something else.
Don't they do it like on their website? They have like all.
Yeah, there's also like, there's already curated combinations. So
Yeah.
you could look it up on the Pantone website, or you could even just do a Google search and look up cool Pantone combos, right? So there might even be Pantone combos already constructed with a concept. There might be a combo that means Christmas. There might be a combo that means happiness. There might be a combo that means, you know, bubblegum. So my point is, you can sort of leverage your own experiences as an artist, and you can also leverage sort of what's out there in the ether, right? What's out there in the zeitgeist, and leverage that as well. You can tap into something that's sort of connecting with people already. But part of it is just doing the research. And you'll notice that all of my classes are really research heavy. There's different types of research. Researching colors is a best practice that I think that you should start sort of refining and honing at this point. Okay. So that's why I am hoping that you guys will find your colors, right? And I hope they're cool combinations. So that's it for me for today, everyone. Any concerns or questions? Anything else?
I would like to ask something, but I can wait.
Okay. Anyone else? Well, thank you everybody for participating with me. Thank you, Jennifer, for chiming in. Thank you, Aaron. I really appreciate that a lot. And thank you, Stefano and Maria. Haya as well. Thank you, everyone who engaged with me today. And I'm looking forward to seeing your final products this weekend. And I'll see you, hopefully most of you on Tuesday. So thank you very much.